Hi, welcome back. So, question is, would you? Would you? Would you leave everything that you've known, that you're comfortable with, that has been part of your life to go on a new adventure, whether it be moving to another country, to open a hotel and you've never opened a hotel, or go on a vacation and suddenly find yourself swept up in a romance and decide to stay forever? Would you do it? That's what we're going to talk about today, but we're going to talk about it through two books. I read them years and years ago when they came out, and I just reread them. First book is Hotel Pastis by Peter Mayle. Peter Mayle was an English author who moved to Provence. He's most famous, I believe, for his book, A Year in Provence. And the other is A Thousand Days in Venice by Marlena de Blasi. Both of them are loosely based on real life. So I'm excited to talk about these, and let's get into it. So Hotel Pastis is about escape and reinvention and the seductive fantasy of starting over. The author writes about Simon Shaw. He's a successful London advertising executive who decides that he is going to move to the south of France and open a hotel and makes this impulsive purchase. And he turns an old police station into a small boutique hotel. It starts out with this romantic dream that Simon Shaw has about lunching in the south of France, drinking good wine, and having slow days. Then all of a sudden, things get real, right? They get real. And he runs into local bureaucracies and staffing problems and not being able to finish any of his projects. So, what ends up happening is the book collides fantasy and reality. Peter Mayle writes in a very dry British way. He paints Provence as the most beautiful place on earth. And I've been there and it is absolutely gorgeous. When you read this book, it's so beautifully written. You feel and smell and see the town and the places and the vineyards and the villages that he was walking through. It's not a super deep book, but it does leave you with thoughts like, what is reinvention versus escape? What happens when fantasy collides with reality? What happens when cultures collide? What happens when you're in midlife and success changes? It's a light book, but it's charming and really well written and an escape. It really is. It does give you a subtle commentary on ambition and identity and really what makes us happy. When I read it the first time, I loved it. And when I reread it a couple weeks ago, after many years, I loved it even more. It made me want to go on an adventure. Isn't that what books are supposed to do? It's the luxury of sitting back and reading and using your imagination to go to places you probably wouldn't go to normally. This book does that. So I encourage you, if you've never read it, it is worth the read, and it's not a very long book, and it's a really fun book. So now we're going to talk about A Thousand Days in Venice. This book is so unique. It's not very big. You can see that. I reread it last weekend. It really is a memoir about love and food and the radical act of starting over in another country. The author, Marlena, an American chef and a food writer, meets a Venetian banker when she goes to Venice. And the connection is immediate and it's intense. It is a book about a romantic interlude and also about what starts out as a romantic adventure becomes life altering. She leaves her life in the United States and she moves to Venice to start a new life with him. It's about what happens when there's language barriers, when people misunderstand each other, when they use food as their identity. It's about being vulnerable. It's about the emotional cost of leaving everything that's familiar in your life and learning how to belong in a place that isn't yours, and using what it is that you are good at to communicate. So in her case, she's a chef. So she used food as her language, going to the markets and making meals and using recipes to bridge relationships, and then falling in love in midlife. I want to read something in the back. A Thousand Days of Venice is a little cioppino of a book, a tasty stew with equal parts travel, food, and romance, spiced up with goodly amounts of fantasy come true. It truly is. It's totally worth the read. It resonates, it's provocative, it's compelling in its bravery. And it does ask a very provocative question: the weight of real consequences when you make life-altering decisions. It also shows you that starting over can be destabilizing, but it can also be intimate and transformative. It's a book that not only talks about Venice distinctly and beautifully. This book is a portrait of what happens when you follow your instincts and your desires. It is a commentary on the reshaping of your life. There's something undeniably seductive about the idea of another life, right? Another country, another rhythm, another version of you. That's why I loved both these books, because they remind us how easily a single decision, following your heart or following a new idea of what your life should be, can direct everything. A dinner invitation, a plane ticket, a property listing. We tell ourselves we're in control, but sometimes desire overcomes that, and we let loose of that control. Sometimes it's just a whisper, and it's like, stay, don't go. The truth is, this was not really about Venice or Provence or buying a boutique hotel. It was about whether someone trusts themselves enough to follow what's pulling them, even if it changes them. So I'm curious. I want you to read these books. I really do, because I think you'll really enjoy them. But I want to know, if something or someone unsettled your perfectly constructed life, would you risk it all for something that just feels more alive? Think about it. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye.